How was that?
That was beautiful.
I thought so.
That was gorgeous.
Like a flower.
Yeah, a little bit better than that.
Well, I guess somebody doesn't appreciate flowers.
I love flowers.
Hey, DJ Ron.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was spectacular. And
Do you have
yours?
it? That was nice. Very nice. Very nice. I thought about some of the cultural stuff. We talk about um, enjoyed some family, got a little political debate. Well, not even a political debate. I got into a conspiracy theory kind of debate thing. That was a little interesting.
Oh, they're not theories, Ron. We know they're not theories.
What's that?
We know they're not theories.
You broke up a little bit there a couple times.
We know they are not theories.
Oh, that they're not serious?
No, they're not theories. Theories.
Oh, theories. Theories. Yes.
Am I
Yes.
breaking up?
You were a little bit. Yeah, you were not bad. You weren't. I don't know. Sound muffled. I wrong term. Muffled is the better word to describe.
Well, I
Because
hope it's not a problem because there's three different settings on quality around here, and I always put it to the lowest quality. But today I was feeling like, I'll put it to the middle quality.
hmm.
Maybe that was a bad decision.
I don't know. Let's see what happens. Are you able to switch if needed?
I'm not sure. I can look into it while we're talking. Anyhow, what are we gonna do for the most rockinest YouTube channel of all time?
Um, how are you liking that sidebar attack on instant messenger?
Sidebar attack on instant messenger. I gotta admit that there's about three of those going. There's actually a personal conversation going on with me.
Hmm.
There is that conversation that you're part of. There's two of them, I think, going right now, if I'm correct. There's one with Dana and I and him. And I've kind of tuned it out because it's hard to keep up with, and it takes a lot of time for me to read. And there's so many things that are said that at the moment, I've kind of tuned it out. I just feel very busy right now.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I'm not paying good attention. I'm sorry.
Oh, neither am I.
That's insulting.
Neither am I, to be honest, because there's really nothing to pay attention to. Once again, a
Wow,
conversation that's
well, that's
not going
rude.
anywhere. That's not
That's
going
rude.
anywhere at all.
That's
Uh,
rude.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah,
Is that
in
really?
those conversations, so there was a pretty interesting development in those conversations. I'm sure there's tons of detail in there that I'm missing, but I did find it interesting that Dana is being called a racist. That's getting interesting. She probably hates Mexicans.
Well, I don't Well, I guess, yeah. Well, I mean, it was definitely insinuated that she was a racist. I don't know that he ever answered the question.
Well, I think he might have said no, but then to me he said she was, and so I don't know what it all means, to be honest. But I do find it interesting that Dana is looking like she's in the eyes of certain people becoming a racist. I'm not really exactly sure how it works at this point in the universe, but Dana, a few people seem to be kind of sort of either directly or indirectly saying she's has racist connections or thoughts. I don't know. I just find it interesting when these things become so. I think the word is tenuous, and then you begin to call people who typically would be the sufferers of racism. So, racist owns in the news. They were calling her a racist, and there's that video clip. I don't know if I sent it to you. I think I did, of that man with dark skin standing in front of news reporters. You know, he would be stereotypically called black, and they're basically asking questions of whether he's a racist, and he's like, "I'm not a racist." And
Hmm.
then there's I don't know if you heard it, but the Proud Boys guy,
Oh yeah.
he went into this long explanation of why he was stepping down, and he continues to say something so very interesting, and that is that no matter what he does, no matter what he says, the media continues to portray them as a racist. And now, you want to talk about a crazy story, Ron? It's my understanding that the FBI is categorizing his group as a white nationalist group, and he outright says no, no every time asked no, and but he can't escape it. He cannot be free of being called a racist, even if he denies it and says, "I hate the Nazis, I hate the white nationalists, I hate all of it." And then, of course, there's Ben Shapiro, who's being called a Nazi. That's funny for anyone who doesn't know because he's Jewish, and again, he's anti-Nazi. But it's just a weird time we're living in.
Yeah. No, it is a weird time. Um, I picked up a couple
So my
interesting.
wife Dana is, according to the rules of racism, she's brown, and she's being called a racist.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah,
I mean, it's
no,
funny, but it's not funny. I don't know.
well, no, no. It's it's not really funny. It is when you think about the insanity of it. But the not so funny part about it is how very serious people are about it. Um, which it's not just that stuff. I mean, it is a lot of it is like the racism kind of stuff, but it goes a lot further. Goes a lot further into a lot of other areas. People seem to want to label, categorize people in these little groups, and it seems like the intention is to simply shut down the conversation. Once again, that's the conclusion I always come to. I I can't help but notice it. It's always very interesting, and I don't know what really to do about that because you can't get beyond that label with a lot of people. It seems like. So, for instance, you mentioned Candace Owen. I mean, I don't know. I mean, she's she's a black woman and um, clearly a black woman, and clearly, and I guess in my opinion, not racist, but if you, I don't know, maybe we need to redefine racism. Maybe racism isn't defined as we really think it is. At least it seems to me like it's being redefined. Could be wrong, but it seems like it's being redefined. And more importantly, that seems to be something that over and over again is kind of pushed into conversations, and not just individual conversations like noted on the IM message, but it's pretty widely held. It seems like between two opposing thoughts and people that hold those thoughts, right?
So maybe the definition that I'm looking at on Google, the first one that comes up is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism. So prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior.
Yeah, so I mean, with that said, um, I'm not sure how that all fits into, a lot of these conversations. I mean, yeah, I mean, take for instance, I mean, the caravan issue. I guess that's a current event. Might be a good topic for this evening. But you take the caravan issue. If you're paying attention to what's going on, the migrants have landed in Tijuana, Mexico. A lot of them, and other parts of Mexico as well. And the reporting that I'm seeing is that many in Mexico are upset and wanting to deport the migrants, send them back home or into the states, and they kind of want them out of their what seems like their homeland, right? Now, the U.S. media, as far as um, the mainstream media, as far as I can see. And I have seen a couple clips provided by like some other alternative media sources. I have seen some other clips of mainstream media actually covering those kinds of things and actually stating some of what I think the reality is that it's not just an American white American thing where people are saying, "Hey, this is our country," and we, from what I understand, people are saying we don't mind you coming in, but we we want you to go through the process. But that's not really how the conversation's being directed in a lot of other ways, though. So I know a lot of other people, which seem to be emotionally driven, say that if you're against this caravan coming into the United States, you're racist. And we have our friends south of the border, and they're not wanting that either. And I'm wondering, would they fall into that category now of being racist? Of course, that's not widely talked about. I don't hear anybody calling them that, but I would think it would follow that same thought process. I would think that they would now, fall into that same category. Um, I I have noticed. I have noticed. I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing as much of the racial direction of that conversation happening. I'm not seeing as much of just the play straight out. If you don't want this to happen, you're racist. But I still do see quite a bit of it. Still do see quite a bit of it. But mostly wondering, now that we're able to observe, which we've always known, because Mexico has borders, and one of the one of the great arguments I think from the conservative side is, they'll often say, well, let's adopt Mexico's immigration policy. Let's just follow their rules. Let's just let's do what they do. Um, and so, again, all those things considered, I think there's this are these people that for whatever reason want to label people racist. If you try to even have the conversation, a rational conversation, which I'm just not sure why. And watching Dana be called a racist, or at least insinuated being called a racist. Same kind of thing. I mean, we're not talking about what you read as the definition of racism. We're talking about these things that really have nothing to do with racism, have nothing to do with the color of anybody's skin, it has nothing to do with any of that. So a little confused why that occurs. But Jeff, maybe are they just living in a bubble? Is that what it is? Is that kind of the
Lost
bottom
their
line?
minds.
Huh?
Well, I do know that definitions seem to be ebbing and flowing. Perhaps that's a way of describing it. If you just take the end of this definition, I think it restricts the meaning of the word a little bit when you just take this idea that one race is superior to another race. So let's imagine that there's all these so-called races, and there's this so-called black race, and there's the so-called white race, and so-called brown race, so-called yellow race, and so-called red race, right? All these made-up kind of things. And
Mhm.
part of the racism here would be that somewhere in someone's mind, they must think one is superior to the other. So certainly Dana could be racist, and believe that any one of the many colors that I just listed is superior to another. That could be the case, but then you'd actually be having real conversation if you started asking questions like that. And if you ask a question like that, which one do you believe is superior? I would guess Dana would say none. So then it becomes a question. Well, why are you calling her a racist? She doesn't think any of these races make up whatever races um, are superior. And then someone might go, well, she may say that, but her actions and the policies she supports are racist. And then one could then follow that with, well, how policy does she have that says one so-called race is superior to another? And I think, Ron, that would be an interesting conversation. You can have that, but I don't think people are having that conversation. I don't know that they're defining their terms. I don't know that they're being careful. It seems more like a haphazard, loose shotgun into the crowd kind of use of terms. And you asked why? I wish I knew. Um, while I don't know why, I do know it's disturbing.
Yeah, yeah. No, very disturbing, obviously. I mean, for again, a lot of reasons, and mostly because although it is funny, in some sense, right? Because it is ridiculous, but um, they're does seem to be some, at least in, in a lot of cases, uh, some consequences to those things. Now, we're exposed to those things more, I think, in the media, meaning that, somebody like a news anchor, right? If they say the wrong thing, um, or they try to insinuate, but I don't really consider that racism, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you a perfect example. Megan Kelly recently, did you hear about that? Said something about, you know, blackface not being racist or something like that. I don't know the full story, but she got canned from her position making mega bucks, and it was all over, that one statement, and her saying, well, it's not racism, it's, blah blah blah, whatever she said. And again, I think it was she said that, the blackface like paint or whatever during Halloween or something. I don't. I'd have to look it up. You probably
I
can.
watched it a few times,
Okay, you saw
and
it.
she says in passing, she was, if I, no, I don't want to say I have absolute certainty on my memory of this, but in passing, she was saying how when she was a child, it was okay to put on a black face. I don't think she was talking about the racist blackface that was done as a mockery. I'm sure you know about that, right?
Yes.
So you know what I'm talking about, where they do the paint the face black, and they have an opening where the mouth is, and it was to mock people with dark skin, and
Yes.
that whole thing.
Yeah.
In the context, I while she used the term "put on a black face" or something like that, I don't believe that she, I genuinely don't believe that she meant that racist um, blackface, but rather just the idea of darkening one's skin to be a character that has darker skin. So, um, and she talks about the Diana Ross impersonator, a person who, to further support that's what she meant. She was talking about a person that has poorly pigmented, putting on some pigment so that she could look like Diana Ross, and then apologizing for it later, but saying that she really liked Diana Ross and was not trying to be racist. That was her story behind it, the other person. So they were talking about these kinds of things. But yeah, she lost her job, and I think it has to do with because she was suggesting that it was okay for people to darken their skin, or at least it was at some time. So she made light of something like that when it's a sensitive topic, especially given the racist past of blackface. I think that's all in there somewhere, but I don't know, Ron. I'm not. I watched it and I thought it was unfortunate that somebody's intentions were apparently overlooked, and the specific words she used, I think, were probably twisted from her intention, and then she, lost her job. I'm not sure that that was her intention. It's sure, if I were to do a nice guess, although you can't read somebody's intentions, but based on the context of the conversation, she did not intend to be saying blackface was acceptable.
Yeah. 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 See that, I don't know, to me that's pretty disturbing. Um mean, that's because clearly, I mean, from your observation, from a lot of people's observation, what you're saying is accurate. And I would have a real hard time believing that anybody, or at least very few people, would walk away from that interaction without being told that it was problematic. Um, that it was problematic, meaning that I don't think anybody, at least for the most part, is going to watch that segment and go, "Oh my gosh, she's totally racist." I don't think anybody would walk away from that conversation thinking that.
Well,
Uh,
people did. I
well, no, 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 hold on. We know the people that did, and those people were her employer, who have often, um, demonized people, um, and given platform to people that demonize people, and call them racist for a number of different reasons. And not just, saying that, a blackface is acceptable, or not racism. I mean, regardless though of people accepting, let's just say there was some people out there that supported that. Um, by and large, I couldn't imagine that that's some big problem with the public. I don't see it. Don't
well,
see it.
let me play not just devil's advocate, but just seek clarity here. You would say it would be a problem if she intended to say blackface was all right,
Well, yeah, if that was the case, yeah. I mean,
and
if she was saying
which is
that,
the mocking, which is the mocking of it's culturally, let's call this culturally accepted that that is outright racism,
yeah, I mean, yeah, like, well,
and it's from a time where it was outright racism, and
mm,
so there's no, I don't think there's no way that it's going to be acceptable to take something that was outright racist from the beginning and make fun of that. I think maybe even you, Ron, who is pretty liberal with the costumes, might say that's a little much, right? Come on, I don't want you to
uh,
lose your job here.
yeah, no, no, I mean, well, I would say depends on the context as well. I mean,
Uh-oh,
if
you would
they
not make it on that television show.
probably not, but I could easily make the case, where I could show you plenty of examples of, non-white comedians, making those statements, making fun of black people, in slavery, making fun of black people in times when they were dealing with racial issues, in the country, and they've made jokes about it, and they've made light of it, and they've tried to bring some humor to it. And so, that's no secret. I mean, that's pretty, you can Google and find those kinds of things. You can go into the past, Richard Pryor, um, comedians like that would make jokes, and um, you don't see that so much today, that's for sure. But nevertheless, um, at one point, people weren't so sensitive to jokes. At one point, it was like, yeah, it's not the greatest past, but nobody in this room, and nobody, within arm's reach necessarily is affected by those things, or was involved in those things, and therefore, you know we're gonna try to bring some humor to it. I don't see a problem with those kinds of things. I think if somebody's intentionally trying to be derogatory, with that symbolism of a black face, and they're intentionally trying to be racist, and they're doing it to hurt somebody, or to say something bad in a way that incites some kind of racism. And yeah, I could see that. But having a conversation, um and saying that, if somebody today, if I were to go today and paint my face black, um you know I I don't see that as problematic personally. But um
Well,
the
there's paint
problem.
your different levels here. There's different levels here. There's darkening your skin, which Orange Man Bad
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if he uses makeup or if that's his natural skin color or what, but he seems to have some skin coloring of some sort going on. I don't know. So there's changing of the color of your skin, and then we have to separate that. Or I'm sorry, I would imagine that's separate from the actual blackface, uh, which is intentionally racist from a bit that was done for comedy, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So there's darkening your skin. Now some might say that's you can't darken your skin, and
yeah, no.
I find that to be uh interesting but understandable. In other words, like it's not something I would care that much about. So I find it interesting that someone would say you can't darken your skin, but I also would be like, I don't know. I don't know that I think it's the end of the world to be sensitive to someone who might feel like that's I don't understand it exactly, but if there's enough screwed up things in this world that I could see myself avoiding being connected with all that screwed up stuff that is in this world. So for me personally, I don't know about you, but for me, I I could see avoiding even darkening of the skin just because it's such a sensitive topic. So the whole blackface thing, that's outright racist. It was a comedy bit from like 1900, early 1900 something. I'm reading it
Mhm.
here. William H. West, minstrel shows. You know that whole thing?
Yeah.
So that is outright racist. Intended to be racist, totally racist. There's nothing you can do with that. Now, darkening your skin, that's that I don't quite understand, but I could see why people might be upset by it. So,
Well, I mean, again, I think, though, if we take though the situation with Megan Kelly, right, and we examine what actually happened, to me, regardless of those things, now we have some context behind, why she got fired, right? We have some context behind it. Now that we know that, we agree, at least to some extent, that, some of those things are problematic. In her particular case, she was terminated from a pretty high level position, in the media, pretty prominent media figure, very well known. Um, and because she made this, I'm not even going to say a misstatement, because she came out and apologized later. Um, and, I think because, well, obviously because of the pressure, but um, if you just take what she said, I'm having a difficult time finding what the problem is. And again, forget about the sensitivities that we talked about in her particular situation. If we just narrow it down to that and address what actually took place, for me, That's a little troubling, isn't it? I mean, am I mistaken? Or you mean
Can
you
I read you her
find,
quote?
huh? I'm sorry.
Can I read you her quote?
Sure.
But what is racist? Kelly asked. Quote, because truly, you do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface on Halloween or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Like back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up like a character. And then she goes on to say, if somebody feels like something is offensive to them, you should say it, and that's fair game. And you should be able to take it off if you're going to dress up like that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's somebody else responding. If somebody feels like something is offensive to them, you should say it, and that's fair game. And you should be able to take it. Take it. You should be able to take it if you're going to dress up like that. So that's somebody responding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, with that said, additional context, um, what happened to her seems troubling. I mean that's
Because she said whiteface.
yeah,
There is no whiteface, as far as I know.
yeah. Well,
In other words, what she meant was coloring your skin. But again, that gets into intention. Intention. So I'm thinking that her intent was talking about darkening or lightening of your skin. And she even goes on to say, when I was a child, like if you were a character or something,
mm-hmm.
like
Yeah,
back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up like a character.
right, right.
And so she's clearly refer she seems to be clearly referring to the idea of just simply darkening or lightening your skin, but she did say blackface, and the problem is blackface is a term. It's a racist. It refers to that minstrel shows and all that craziness,
Yeah.
and that's where
Yeah.
we get into this. To me, the scary part is that she may have chosen words that are hot button words, if that makes sense, and that was probably a poor choice of words. But the intent seems to be referring to darkening or lightening of your skin to wear a costume. And she's even saying that seemed to be okay before, but maybe not anymore. She's asking the question. So it doesn't seem like it's very much like it's portrayed like this. She thinks it's okay for minstrel show costumes or anything like that. It doesn't seem like that's what she's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I think in terms of her situation and whether we want to say she used poor choice of words, I would argue, there we go into that, you know, that area that is very subjective, and depends on largely who you're talking to. And I would say for the most part, people, unless told that it was problematic, wouldn't think it's problematic at all. And therefore the question becomes, why would the network choose that action? Why would the network choose to fire a very high profile person over making that statement when clearly, in its context and everything we know about it, she wasn't being racist? I'm confused.
Well,
She didn't say the N word.
I'll read you a comment in response to all this. It says Megan Kelly seriously doesn't understand the problem with blackface? Question mark. Historical perspective. Quote or sorry colon. Blackface is traced to minstrel shows in which white actors painted their faces black and mockingly depicted dehumanizing caricatures of black people. Just don't.
um Yeah, so
I thought this might have been an exaggeration, but no, Megyn Kelly is really doing a quote, I don't see what's so offensive about blackface, end quote. Dear Megyn Kelly, you and I are approximately the same age. Blackface was not okay when we were kids. Take it from a big-hearted boy who just wanted to show his love for Nipsey Russell on the worst Halloween of my life. So I don't understand that. But so what they're saying is that she is saying it's okay to dress up in blackface.
yeah, that's what they said, but that's not what she said.
Well, come on now, Ron. Let's turn our brains off for a second and just read what she said. She said, uh, uh, my goodness, I can't find it anymore. Oh, she said, quote, you do get in trouble if you're a white person who puts on black face on Halloween or a black person who puts on white face. Like back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressed up like a character. So she said it.
um, no, no, she
She
didn't.
said, you do get in trouble if you're a white person who puts on blackface on a Halloween or a black person who puts on white face. So she said you get in trouble. But the key here, by the way, is interesting. She said you get in trouble. But she said when I was a kid, that was okay. What's
Hmm.
interesting about it is she actually says it's trouble to do that. But the key is that she said that when she was a child, it was okay.
Hmm.
But even then, like you just said, she didn't really. I don't know that she really said that.
Yeah, no, she didn't. She didn't say that. And so for me, I don't know how it's possible. I don't know how it's possible she's not suing them. I don't know how it's possible that the network even got away with that. I don't know how it's possible that nobody even cared or really was blinking an eye for the most part over that. To me, that's a clear problem, but um, if if you continue to do those kinds of things, to what end? To what end? Where does it stop? Where does it stop? Well, I'll tell you. I don't know that that particular question can be answered as far as where does it stop, but I'll tell you where it overflows into conversations like the ones that we see and observe happening like on the IM. um those kinds of remarks, those kinds of conversations, those kinds of dismissing um facts and data, statistics, and dismissing conversations simply because one is not going with what you're supposed to go with. I don't know how you can I don't know how you can look at that kind of stuff and not see it as um, a major issue that it affects so many conversations. It affects so many things. It affects so many relationships. Um, because I mean, you think about it, just boil this down, to this individual that we're talking about. I mean, you can't even have a conversation. We can't talk about what the facts are. For instance, the migrants, the caravan issue. I mean, we were to start boiling down the statistics, we were to start boiling down, you know, some of the some of those problem statements that we hear in the media. we start asking questions, which we should be able to do. We should be able to get a full understanding of what the situation actually is. We should be able to address what their intent is. We should be able to measure, what the media is saying, about the situation, and then, see if that's reality, that matches up with reality. And a lot of times, it just doesn't. And this particular situation with Megyn Kelly is one of those situations, one of many, by the way, but one of those situations where, somebody was fired, for something that just didn't happen. And to say it did, I I don't know. I mean, if somebody right now, Jeff, stated, and I know, I bet you we could find somebody that would say that, even if they didn't really truly believe it, but they it'd be contrary enough to say, yeah, I'm with them. That was racist. She, blah blah blah. But I mean, if we were to find somebody that actually said that, what would your response be? Because I'm curious. I'm curious how anybody thinks that situation is acceptable, and I'm curious to see how anybody doesn't see that was a complete manipulation of an event. And it's it doesn't even seem like it's a I don't know. Doesn't even seem like you can walk away from that with any kind of reasonable justification for that action. But again, I mean, you tell me, what would you say to somebody that said, yeah, that's actually what happened? I mean, would you
I
say
would
that
I
it's,
would just ask questions.
yeah? What kind of
That's
questions?
all. Let me
What
talk across the room to Dana because she's just shaking her head. What's wrong, Dana? Are you connected to our internet? Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties with the hidden third element of this conversation.
Hmm, that is okay.
Yeah. Um. Are you? Can you close the app? Can you close it? Yes. Is it closed? Yes. All right. Sorry about that. Ron,
Mm-hmm. No, it's
but
okay.
I'm just trying to get Dana connected here.
Yeah,
Dana, did you
that's
get an invitation? I'll send you an invitation. You shouldn't be trying to log in directly because it doesn't seem to work. You've already noticed that, right? So every time you do that, it locks you out. Can you? It has nothing to do with him. But Judah, can you go to bed? Even though that doesn't do anything. I mean, I'm on this computer. I'm on this computer. But you can bring the phone over. Sorry, I'm have we're just had some difficulties over here.
that's
Anyway,
okay.
I again, these are the kind of things. These conversations almost go nowhere because we don't have the people who represent these other ideas to explain it to us, and I have difficulty understanding what they would even say.
Yeah,
Certainly, she said those words. So that's to me the strong point. The strong point is she said those words. But what I don't understand is what this knee jerk sort of reaction is to things without giving any thought to the depth of anything that somebody is saying. I
Yeah.
just simply don't understand uh, where the words let's think about, what the intention of this person is. Can you ask a follow-up question? Can you
Right.
actually ask them what they meant? And then when they tell you what they meant, why don't you just accept what they meant? Unfortunately, it seems in today's culture, over and over again, people will say that's what they said, but that's not what they meant. And then when they explain what they meant, they say that's not really what they mean because we know better what they actually mean. And you
Mm-hmm.
have this kind of stuff going on. With Trump, it's like that all the time. Trump can outright say, I think Nazis are bad, and I think white supremacists are bad, and I think all this stuff is abhorrent and horrible, which he did say. And people will say, well, he's saying that, but that's not actually what he means. And while he doesn't say the opposite of that, that's because he's secretly a racist. And it gets really difficult because it's like, what is going on here exactly? And like I
Yeah.
said, there's multiple people already listed who are being called racist, even though they outright condemn racism. And in that one case, that the last two cases I gave with Ben Shapiro and that man who uh, had dark skin, who would be called, by people they'd call him black. He he was being called a white supremacist, and it's just it's just it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It is. It's crazy. Very crazy. Um. So what? What are your? So, for instance, you've seen me not engage in this conversation. The question being asked to me, which I don't mind sharing that question, but I will quote directly. So, one second as I pull that up.
Oh, this is
And
from the Facebook conversation.
yes, yes, this, yes. So, this is the question being asked of me. And when the reason why I don't bother answering this question is because it's not a simple one to two statement kind of solution. There's it's multiple layers that need to be considered in my response, but my response will generate kind of what we're talking about. So I wouldn't even really be able to get out of the gate. I would just start to say something and I would get some kind of like label, whether it's racist or something like that. Most likely racist in some sense. Because I'm always called a racist. But the question is, Ron, why shouldn't healthcare be treated as a public, or excuse me, as a service like the police and the fire department instead of a for-profit business? Um, and so if if you begin, and we can, I mean, I don't, I have plenty of examples of trying to address that question, and many questions like that, where I try to give an explanation of well, there's a couple different reasons why. And there's a the solution is multi-layer, and it may very well come down to, yeah, that it would be offered in some sense as a public service, but you can't get there because any deviation from just saying yes, it needs to be a public option, and that's just the bottom line. And if you disagree with that, you're hateful and you're racist and blah blah blah. You can't
And
even
you want
have the
people to
conversation.
die.
Yeah, and I want people to die, and you can't you can't even get past that. Now, again, if it were just one individual, I would go, yeah, it's just one meathead.
How dare you call him a meathead?
Yeah, just one meathead being difficult, but it's not. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people, and that goes. I would say it not only goes like for the although more, I'd say definitely more prevalent on the progressive side of things, no doubt. But I see a lot of that on the conservative side as well, to be honest. Um, I get a lot of that all the time. You just pick the subject. There's always that joke that floats around on a meme in Facebook, which is I always find funny, but the one that basically, I can tick off my Republican friends and I can tick off my liberal friends. The long and short of it, and that's the truth. I mean, I can easily demonstrate that it's almost impossible at times to have a conversation. And so that's why I find kind of what happens in the media is so problematic because I feel like that's just kind of in everyday life people just follow suit. They're not thinking about what Megan Kelly actually said. They're just accepting what the consequences were, and they're just accepting that these people all are saying this, and it's a very interesting thing to observe, but it's very clear. And anybody that doesn't see that again tends to just kind of throw out the oh you're paranoid blah 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 think everybody's out to get you it's conspiracy but it's not a conspiracy. I mean you take the Megyn Kelly thing it's very clear. I mean you see it. I see it. I think if most people were to if the people that hear this conversation that are reasonable would go, yeah, I see what they're saying. I mean, that's not, she didn't say that. I mean, and their actions based on her statement seem kind of weird. I mean, that's interesting. And they could if they have experienced trying to have a conversation with somebody during holidays or politics and things like that and it starts going south, there's usually that same kind of thing happening. There's usually that same kind of wow, you're just this, you're that. I don't know because I don't know what to do about that other than to not participate in those kinds of conversations, if at all possible, for the time, because they don't go anywhere. They don't, and therefore, addressing that question to that individual to me seems pretty silly. And so, I mean, it's almost a joke. I don't even know if he's serious. I can't even take somebody like that serious because it's so ridiculous. And it's so ludicrous. And it used to be a point where I thought I could, make headway and make ground in ground in a conversation with somebody like that. And unfortunately, I've learned over and over again through many attempts and um, many mistakes myself, getting frustrated with those kinds of situations. To be honest, very frustrated with those situations, but trying to make headway, trying to have a reasonable conversation just doesn't work. Therefore, again, reiterating kind of why I wanted to have this platform to do this is to be able to examine, issues like that and go, wait a second, I know what the mainstream kind of take on this thing is, but the reality of the situation is the Megyn Kelly thing is bizarre, just is. And we can excuse it because we don't really have any definitive answers. But we can say for sure that is a very prevalent thing that we see in the culture, that we see in the media. That happens quite a bit. That happens with multiple people, and it doesn't just happen with white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls like Megyn Kelly. It also happens with, as we stated earlier in the show, it also happens with people like Candace Owen. It also happens with people like your partner, Dana, who aren't blonde haired, who aren't white, who do not have blue eyes. And if you do not agree with what they're saying, then you are a racist. And the conversation is just simply shut down. And therefore, again, I mean, for our purposes, being able to examine those things and give give a different kind of approach and a different platform seems to be beneficial, at least to some extent, because there are many that I have listened to on these kinds of things. They have different flavors and personalities, but a lot of people have stepped out into this realm. A lot of people are diving into or attempting to dive into having reasonable conversations and do this, and I find them very beneficial. I find them to stimulate thinking. I find them to be able to kind of generate that conversation that we desire to have. I know you do, because I've had many with you over the years, um, and so if we were to take an issue, any issue that we've taken, you typically going into it, looking at it, examining it seems to be beneficial. And I think it's a way of sharing, um, thoughts and giving people an opportunity to say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that was silly too. I didn't really think about it in those terms, but now that you're mentioning it, yeah, absolutely, that's ridiculous, and um, I think being able to, help equip people for conversations as well, because I think that if you if you don't know how to handle those situations, if you don't know what they're saying and you don't know how to reason with somebody like that, or to even back off, it can be very frustrating. And so, but on the other side of that, if you are able to hear that people out there are thinking reasonably, are trying to kind of process the data and look at the situation in a holistic way and consider, multiple points of view. Uh, I don't know. I tend to think that's beneficial, to you know to a lot of people, hopefully. And for the people that can't handle that, that's okay too. I mean, we know somebody, quite a few people, I guess, right? That just aren't able to have conversations. Period.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Hi. Hi. it just as simple as there's a lack of an assumption of goodwill?
You mean like intention?
Yeah, like the people on the other side of the conversation with you who um, cut it off or start to get very inflammatory or insulting. Is it that they just, it seems like it just might be that they don't assume goodwill on your part, like they're not assuming the best, so that if you make a stray comment or whatever, it's just viewed in the worst possible light, and you're viewed as somebody not worth not worth continuing to talk to.
Well, okay. That may be the case. And I would say if that is the case, we'll take the Megan Kelly situation. Think about that for a minute. So you have a network with some very powerful people in the media, terminating a pretty prominent figure, very well known, over the statement when clearly we see that it wasn't racist. It wasn't anything derogatory. There wasn't anything crazy being said. Any, I think, reasonable person watching it would need to walk away, or at least should walk away with those conclusions. If you don't, I'm not sure what to say, but if you don't, whatever. But with what you're saying, that's an interesting thing. I mean, think about it for a minute. So you have these, prominent media figures. She makes a statement, and they just think the absolute worst of her. Is that what I'm understanding? Is that, she's in her eyes for making that in their eyes for making that one statement, she is racist. I mean, is she really? I mean, they demonize her. They don't like her anymore because of that. Is that what happened? They just can't see past. They can't see past that one thing that she said, and they were just, I mean, think about it for a minute. I mean, she just made one misstatement, supposedly a misstatement, but let's just say it was a misstatement. Let's just say off the cuff, she just said something that was stupid. But she didn't really even mean to say it. She was just joking, but it did come out as it did appear to be, let's say, a racist joke or whatever. Let's just say that for a minute. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, boom, you say the one wrong thing, you're gone. There is no forgiveness. There is no redemption. This is it. You're terminated. You're out of here. I mean, that's what happened. I don't know if it happened for the reasons that you're stating it happened, but if we go with that thought, at the end of the day, that's what happened. And that's an interesting thought that you have. I mean, maybe they just think the worst. And if that's true, I mean, that kind of very well could be true. It certainly does seem probable. Certainly does seem like, from my interaction with the individual that you and I interact with for many, many years, I didn't really see it that way, but started to recognize several years ago that, yeah, he doesn't really seem to think the very best of me at all, in any way. Matter of fact, from the statements he's making, he thinks some pretty awful things about me. And I used to think it was joking. I used to think it was just kind of playing and bantering because that's what we did. But then I started realizing, no, he's doing these things in public. He's saying these things outside of this little close group of people. Now he's saying those things in front of my family. He's saying those things in front of my friends and my coworkers. And he's demonizing me in those ways. And, I've had people actually comment, several people comment and go, "You're friends with that guy?"
Yeah, people do that with me too.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
Now,
Now,
I've had
the other day said that I know they all look alike. She was talking about black people, and she was joking with a show host who mixed up two people with dark skin. So Clinton told the joke.
Right.
I know they all look alike. Now, with what Dana was saying a second ago, if you take the words that she said, Hillary Clinton's words, and you don't try to think the best of her, she just made a very racist statement.
Yes. That is exactly it. That's correct. And you see that happen over and over again.
But if you think the worst of her, as it seems like they're doing with Megyn Kelly, then you would just take that statement and you would, out of context, and you would say she's a total racist. You know what's funny? Dana, I gotta insult you. Why can I connect you every time, but you never can connect yourself? That's a question that I want to get to the bottom of.
I want to get to that bottom of that question too.
I have to continually walk over and push the buttons to make the phone come back on.
We talked about the deep state before.
Hey, why don't you try connecting to the 5G network? Just take that little finger of yours and
maybe I just
hold down on the screen.
Being close to me.
Oh my gosh. Can you hear anything she's saying, Ron?
A little bit.
I don't know how to do anything.
Here, look. We're gonna switch. This is
No.
Here you go.
No. So I think we're wrapping up the show, right?
I couldn't hear you.
Couldn't hear me?
A little bit better.
Yeah, so I think we're wrapping up the show. But conversation culturally and in the media and these personal conversations we have, I really guess is a big part of the problem is just the lack of assumption of a goodwill by the other side. And it's very much like, if you're in a relationship with somebody and they don't have this assumption of goodwill,
Yeah.
any stray comment or an action that you didn't do to intentionally hurt them, they'll take it in the worst possible way and
Yep.
accuse you without really stopping to consider all the alternatives.
Yes.
You know, like if you were late, 5 minutes late or something, or 10 minutes.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. When somebody, I've had it happen. I've had it happen at work. As a matter of fact, not several years ago now, but I had a. Can you hear me? By the way.
I can hear you, but Dana's she's just talking away in the other room, but I don't think we can hear her.
Yeah. So Dana, I hear what you're saying. I've seen it myself many times. As an example, I had a manager, and it'd be those kinds of things. I mean, you could use being late,
Just
but
go in
you
the
could use, huh?
boys' room. Sorry, Dana's
No,
having some issues. I think she's got some
deep state.
in her. Yeah,
Yeah, deep
she
state.
might be the deep state.
She
I
is
think
deep state.
it's like maybe little bugs that are crawling all over me and making some
Ooh,
type of deep state force field.
there's some.
What do you guys think?
There is awesome audio finally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good audio. So, yes, Dana, I like what you're saying.
What was
I
I
like.
saying?
Well, you were talking about it's a lot like being in a relationship with somebody. That they, whatever you do, whether it be for like 5 minutes late, it gets blown to the point. It gets escalated to the point where the end of the
someone's yelling at you,
someone's yelling at you. The end of the
and they're and
world.
they're and they're freaking out. What are they? They're saying things like gaslighting me, and that's
Yeah.
over. You've been, I've been played with long enough.
Oh
Well,
gosh.
well,
Wow,
you.
that's a fresh wound. I don't know if the show is the place to bring that wound out.
Well, there. Narcissism actually would be a very good topic, a very good, interesting topic. It's very prevalent, and typically, interesting enough, I mean, the depending on the individual, but I'll leave that for another topic. But, uh, yes, Dana. Um, somebody will look at the things that you do and over again can demonstrate that they think the very worst of you, that they don't do, you can't do anything right. If you attempt to do certain things, a lot of times it's twisted. If you say certain things, that thing being stated is taken offensively. Um, you are dismissed, uh, disregarded. You're kind of ridiculed. There's a number of different ways that this happens. I think a perfect example is some of the stuff that we've seen with some of the people we know. You make certain statements. You've made the the wrong statement, and you've said it with the wrong intentions. Um, if you want to use the example of showing up late, sorry, I didn't mean to. No, yes, you did. Blah 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 blah, and you ruined the day, and everything's over. And yeah, no, Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. And one thing I was thinking, just as you were,
I was
talking
talking
about
about the
this,
coyotes.
the coyotes.
Yeah,
Oh,
listen, hold on. One sec.
This is the
are you
best
gonna
show on
run
the
with
internet.
them? Are you gonna run with the coyotes? Are you gonna run away to end the show?
No, hold on. Let's see. Oh man, that was cool. Anyway, the
Best
so I
YouTube channel on the internet.
so
People don't
Dana,
know what they're missing. People
They
don't
don't
know.
know.
no,
No, but
they
I do
don't.
have a deep thought. I have an application as we wrap up this amazing show.
You keep
Yes.
saying we're
I
wrapping
have a
this up.
deep thought. Hey, I gotta
I'm confused.
go to bed. So, I don't know if Jeff told you earlier, but I had, I'm trying to in my small amounts of spare time, I am trying to have some of these conversations with people who think differently. And so maybe you shared that in my last conversation where I was actually really trying to not be, to be the best I could without with still while still disagreeing, but still being very like empathetic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
low to, I mean, listening, I was trying to listen, show I was listening. And I don't know the whole story, but it seems like this person chose to abruptly unfriend me. And um, and maybe there's more to it, but I was a little surprised and maybe a little hurt. But I did think about maybe this I guess trying to be the best I could, right? And moving
Mm-hmm.
forward in pursuing conversations with people who think differently. Um, maybe trying to just take full account of, okay, like what could I actually apologize for genuinely? Or what missteps have, say, if I'm representative of a group, let's say I'm representative of Christians or something, has there been a misstep that I could take ownership for, Um,
Mm-hmm.
as much as, and then, just express humility and maybe as far as a cultural conversation, like, oh, shows off the air. The deep state, it's done. It's done.
Why
The
did
show
you
is
say
off
it's
the
off the
air.
show?
Oh, and something just popped up on my screen.
Oh.
But so, for example, a long time ago, I think Jeff and I mean, this feels like decades ago, but it was probably what, 10 or 13 years ago, where the proposition about gay marriage came up. And I think we voted against it, right? Um, Probably today, if that same legal issue was statewide, I probably wouldn't. Well, I guess I'm not really voting. So, but I wouldn't vote against it today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe, I could kind of meet somebody there to say, yeah, I actually don't think government is really the place for Christians to enforce morality, even if we think there are going to be repercussions. Um, I don't think this is a Christian nation, and um, it's kind of foolish to expect non-Christians to live up to those dictates about sexuality and marriage and all that. So maybe I could meet somebody there to say, yeah, I could see how maybe you felt, I don't know, hurt, or that wasn't, the right thing to do. So perhaps maybe trying to think about, I'm thinking about that now, because it seems like with some of these people, there's just a lot of um I don't know if I'd call it resentment or just a lack of goodwill. And maybe some of their perceived wrongs are something I can agree on. And I'm acknowledging that when I come to these conversations with them, I don't have a lot of those grievances, right? Or even if I really think they've done they stand for things that I'm opposed to, I'm just not coming at them with that same amount of being, I guess, being quick to write them off and quick to assume really bad motives on their part. These conversations still might go terribly, but I am thinking, okay, like how can I do the best I can to try to reach out, like meet them as much as possible with some common ground. And maybe things will go better, or maybe it's hopeless and pointless. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, unfortunately, and I'm gonna just state it pretty clearly, is that though that is, and I agree, because no matter what, I still will try to start out that way, no matter what. But I've come to realize with some of these people, no matter how you do this, no matter how you do this, you're always going to end up on the bad side of this thing unless you just give just a pure, this is, yes, I believe it. And you your approach, right, to trying to have the conversation, I think that's excellent. I wouldn't even, stop trying to do that. But I will say, um, you're ultimately and inevitably going to come across many of those individuals when you try to have that conversation. You're just not going to be able to, no matter what your intention, because they just don't believe the best things about you. As a matter of fact, they believe some pretty awful things about you.
Actually, I think you're wrong.
No, well, I guess so.
You ready?
Maybe, yeah.
I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Yeah, maybe. Show me, because I'd love to.
If Dana and you would just agree that their ideas about policy are best, then you would no longer be racist.
Well,
It's that simple, Ron.
Well, no, that's what I just said, though.
All you got to do is say, I think those policies are good.
Yep.
And then they'll say, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess you're not a racist.
That's what I said.
I think it's so interesting, right? Because it's that simple.
Well, it is that simple. But you have to give the hard. You have to give the hard. Yes, I just agree. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you would agree with them, you wouldn't be racist anymore.
Yeah. And I'm open to being wrong and change. I'm open to being wrong, but currently, it's very interesting because several months ago I got really into listening to Jordan Peterson's talks and all his pontifications, and a lot of times it seemed some of his things seemed kind of like overly dramatic when he would talk about the authoritarians, and when he was talking about the bill in Canada that he was protesting against about the enforced pronoun use, and these, he immediately link this attempt to police language like right to the gulags. We're going to go right into that heavy authoritarian violent type of movement, and it seemed a little far-fetched. And today I'm closer to thinking that he's really right on as far as the mindset of some of this, I guess I would just call it maybe leftist thinking that just wants to control others. And if you express dissent or a different opinion, it's just like you're done.
Yeah.
I'm either going to break off my relationship with you. You're a non-person to me. And that's like when we're relating to each other just one to one. But then I think, oh, that is scary. What does this type of approach look like when they have more political power?
Yeah. Well, no,
and
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I keep arguing with conservatives, believe it or not, and I keep telling them, although yes, I definitely like some of the things that he does say and tweet out and use social media. I'm referring to Trump. Um, there is the other side of that, and that is, take somebody that disagrees, somebody that like we're talking about.
Are you getting
And
electrocuted right now, Ron?
I don't know what that is. Not
What
it
is
doesn't
that?
sound like. It sounds like it's Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. I thought you were trying
So
to have a
yeah.
dramatic effect there.
Well, there's a meme and that I have posted in the past, and I'll read it to you. Let me pull it up. So I just posted. Well, yeah, I just posted again not too long ago. But what did it say here? Basically, oh, here it is. Here it is. It's the scene from the 2016 election for the Hillary campaign, and it shows this very well known kind of picture, and it says, "It's hard to feel sorry for the people who think government should have virtually unlimited power, but never consider that it might end up in the hands of somebody that they don't like." And so, with that said, that's kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. And I think you can see the dangers of it. I mean, you're not a mega media figure. You're well on your way, though, right? I mean, you're
Close.
yeah, you're well on your way, but you're not a major media figure. But think for a minute. Think for a minute and just think about some of the things you said, and you have said, and some of the ideas and some of the conversations that you've participated in. If you were a major media figure, you'd be terminated immediately. You'd be gone. I don't
Yeah,
even.
I'm actually lucky that I'm unemployed right now.
Right.
Right? I'm already unemployed. What more can you do to me?
Mhm. Well, no, that's the scary part. That's the scary part.
Well, my boss is calling, so I'm gonna have to go. It was a great show.
Okay.
The boss is the baby.
All right. Jeff, you want to cue up that music?
do I want to?
Mhm.
Oh man, I want to.
Yeah.
But no, I don't always get what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do.
You can't always get what you want. So my son turned the computer off because I started using the audio from the computer, and Dana told him to cut it off because she thought that it was causing some internet issues. So she took down the audio indirectly. That's the deep state right there. Are you there?
Yeah, no, it's deep state. It's no doubt, it's deep state.
But I have other ways. I have my ways. We're gonna do the echo style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All
The
right.
electricity noise went away. That's nice.
The electricity noise.
Mm-hmm. There's like a clicking for a little while
Oh,
there.
okay. It might have been me. I had it on my shoulder while I was doing some things. All right.
Yes.
It has been amazing. I don't be surprised if this show doesn't make it past the cutting block. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.